Hey powerful people, are you happy with the amount of money you make? Well, this is the age-old question of, will money buy you happiness? So we're going to take a look at that today and kind of what the standard of living is and what metrics do we need to hit in order to be happy with the amount of money we make. So let's start by looking at what the current status of most households is. So most households will spend about $72,000 a year on their expenses. From mortgage to car payments to credit card debt, health insurance, food, and some other related expenses. But as Americans, our average income is about $31,000. And our average spending is about $67,000. So we're not quite to the point where we're making enough money to make ends meet. And obviously, as our home size grows, our expenses will go up. For a household of 2 people, the average is about $63,000 a year spent. For a household of 3 people, that goes up to about $70,000. For a household of 4, it goes up to $84,000. And actually at 5 people, it drops back down to about $80,000. I'm not sure why that is. Maybe they just get more shopping savvy and a little more conscious of their finances at that point. But where is the point that we make enough money to be happy without making any more money? Well, according to a study done, that is about $75,000 per person. And in today's economy, that actually kind of measures up. It may seem like a lot, considering that our average wage is about half of that. But considering the fact that inflation has gone way up in the last few years, house prices have averaged about $120,000 more than they did a few years ago. Gas price, food price, all those things have gone up. About $75,000 is actually pretty true to what we need to live. And now you may be saying, well, I don't make that much. How could I ever make that much? Well, there are ways, and we'll talk about that at the end. But we're going to look at the reasons why that metric is kind of the point where making any more won't make us any happier. So some psychologists have always said that the more you gain, the less joy you're going to have. And there's a quote that says, we always think that we just need a little bit more money and we'd be happier. But when we get there, we're not. But indeed, when we make it, we still want more. And the more you have, the less effective it is at bringing joy. So the more money we have, the less effective it is at bringing us joy because we still want more. And that's why there's this point where once we meet our basic needs and then a little bit more, we're happy because anything more than that isn't hitting at the core of who we are. There are some studies done though that when we make more money at a certain point, it exponentially helps our happiness. So when we go from making $20,000 to $50,000 a year, we're exponentially happier because more of our basic needs are met. And we're able to do some more of those fun things or have some of those just other things in our life like subscriptions that otherwise we wouldn't have been able to afford. So at that point, we've exponentially met some of our wants and we're able to then meet all of our basic needs. But when we go from $50,000 to $90,000 a year, that happiness increase is very small because we're not meeting any more of those basic needs. We're not able to create any more life out of that money than we did at the $50,000. So we can see that even though having more is sometimes good, it doesn't always get us where we want to go. But what does bring happiness is that challenge of getting to a goal. So even though a goal may make us more money, the challenge is what actually brings us life. Because the challenge is what helps us grow. And when we meet the goal, we're not happy with the goal because we're just done challenging ourselves. And that's where we meet our life of unhappiness, when we've stopped challenging ourselves. So when we think about our life and our happiness and our income, we really need to look at, okay, am I making enough money to meet my basic needs and then a little sum just to be able to have some fun playroom to go on some vacations or go out with friends? but we really need to be looking at what things are challenging us in our life to bring us that happiness and growth. And when we are in these seasons of growth, they are great experiences. We may be pushing ourselves out of our comfort zone to be able to try new things and try new experiences. And experiences and relationships are really those two things that can bring us the most happiness. And the reason is because we can extrapolate and really hone in on those moments of those experiences that are really good. We can exaggerate and replay them over and over and over. And so those moments just become more exciting because they live in our brain for so long, and we can keep reliving those moments and the emotions that come with it. But the things that we get, the money, they all fade. And they're all on this trail of hedonistic treadmill is what a lot of psychologists call it, that you're just trying to constantly keep up with those around you by attaining the stuff and the money and the status. So when we chase after those challenges and experiences and growth is where we really find our happiness. And now making enough money to finance those is important. So obviously there is this aspect that we need to make enough money to finance that. But we can do those same sort of things on a lower budget in our area with the people we already know. So in a study done, when they asked people who they compared themselves to, those who were less happy went on and on and on about who they compared themselves to with those around them, those they saw on social media. But those who were already in a place of happiness just said, well, what are you talking about? I don't compare myself to anyone because my happiness isn't found in comparing myself to how they're living. It's comparing it to how I'm living. It's understanding that I'm living my best life. I'm doing the things that bring me the most joy and hit at the core of who I am. So we can see that there is a standard of living financially to be able to make ends meet with our housing and clothing and food and all of those sort of items. But our happiness is really found when we're searching outside of those things for who we are. And when we're searching the world for greater experiences that bring us deeper understanding and challenges. But maybe you are in that place where you're barely making it. So there's a bunch of different things you could do. If you live in a place like I do here in Fort Lauderdale, Miami area, it's really expensive for housing. You can move locations. Even if you're working a minimum wage job here and you move somewhere that's a lot cheaper, somewhere in North Carolina, a smaller city, you may make the same amount, but your living costs are going to be a lot less. So that's one option. Or you could start a business, selling things on Etsy, creating a course with knowledge you have. Or you can go get some training, apprentice someone for a year and learn a new skill to be able to jump into a higher paying career. Or if you're in a job that you are able to work remote, you can also move to a cheaper location. So these are all sorts of different things you can help to improve your standard of living financially, but really looking at what's going to bring you happiness will help you improve. Because maybe you only make $40,000 a year and your standard of living is like a lot of people now that are living out of buses, and they can afford that because they don't have the payments on a mortgage and all the utilities, and they don't have all the car payments. They just have the house they live in, and maybe it's totally paid off. So maybe if that circumstance comes up, your standard of living is different. So you really have to understand what's going to make you happy with how you're living and kind of what financial aspect is going to meet that. And now maybe if you want a massive yacht and a jet plane, you have to work a lot harder to make millions to afford those things. For me, my wife and I lived in Wisconsin for a year, and I was making about $36,000 before taxes, about $30,000 after. And we had a pretty good standard of living. Now granted, we had a very cheap house that we rented, $600 a month, which is insane, a little 2-bed, 1-bath with a garage and some land. But this is in the middle of nowhere, Wisconsin, so very cheap. But when you really concentrate on areas of your life that you can cut down expenses, then it really helps. and you can start looking at using your money more wisely. Investing it, putting it back into yourself with courses and education and training. So just remember that when you're looking at your standard of living, really define what you want and what it's going to take to get there. And stop comparing yourself to others and realize that your happiness with your finances is in your control and that you're able to create those experiences pretty cheap that fulfill who you are.